So I feel like there's a lot of Tory voters out there who you say, oh, you want the NHS to die, all these sorts of things. It's not true. They want it to be sustainably funded and to not come crashing down when the country's brought to its knees in 5 years.
In the past, my parents have always been like, oh yeah, Conservatives, because Conservatives are going to benefit us. And every borough that I've grown up in London has been a Conservative borough, well, predominantly anyway. So there was none of this talk of, oh yeah, vote Labour or anything like that. So it was just like a general consensus for us all to do it. And now that I look back on it in hindsight, a lot of the people that I grew up with were very well-to-do people who had a lot of money. So obviously now looking at the policies and stuff, their parents obviously would have benefited more for voting for Conservative. So I understand it a lot, but coming to uni, I've looked into it a lot more. Labour. Yeah.
So this constituency is always Labour in it,
Yeah.
Linton. But the topics that the Lib Dems had laid out in their manifesto are just topics that I personally find important. So it was kind of a vote to show the types of things that I care about.
I wasn't able to vote because I was in Mexico. No, I was busy on the day. So, but had I voted, I would have voted for Labour because I think they address a lot of issues that are very important. Obviously, it's important that we run the economy well and we're prosperous as a nation. We get Brexit done and such. But I think you've also got to tackle things at a ground level. So the people that are less fortunate and aren't as well off also need to be given more of a fighting chance.
More time, I just think it's the lesser of the two evils, because at the end of the day, what the Conservatives always preach when they come into power, for me personally, what I've got from it, is like economic sensibleness or sensibility, whatever it's called, fiscal responsibility and all them kind of things, like to throw around them terms. So what they do is they'll impose an austerity period. In that period of austerity, you would assume, right, that the economic, situation of the country is getting better. If surely if all these people are doing worse off, the poorer people, surely the economy must be benefiting from that. But actually, I don't know the exact figures, but I think you've almost doubled the debt, the Conservative government, in the last 9 years, due to like all the student fees that you said you're going to get back and all that stuff, and all the other stuff. Like obviously, the money you've spent, what I'm saying is, on the stuff you have, and the money you haven't spent on the stuff you haven't, for the reasons you've said, it doesn't add up.
Yeah, I voted Conservative as well, and I'm in a similar boat, whereas historically I probably favour Labour, but just in this election, for me, it just wasn't possible. I mean, we can go on about Jeremy Corbyn, but I kind of took a standpoint of thinking, when the vote is delivered, what situation will the country be in? So, looking at the election, for me, there was the only party which had a realistic chance of getting a majority was the Conservatives.
But my problem with Labour at the moment is Jeremy Corbyn as leader of the Labour Party. I honestly don't know how anyone could vote for him because he's got a history of going against the UK. In the 1980s, we had the Brighton bombings, the IRA bombed the Conservative Party conference, the hotels of from manufacturers in there. And we got Corbyn meeting with the Irish Republican Army in Parliament. We got Corbyn meeting with terrorist organisations such as the Hamas. We got Corbyn then allowing anti-Semitism running rife in his party. And I just think in every opportunity, Corbyn has gone against the UK in situations.
If you correct me if I'm wrong, Elijah, here was the kind of stigmatism behind people who vote Conservative and the kind of vitriol and the hatred on social media and the kind of unwillingness to kind of have it heard out and the kind of don't speak to me if you voted Tory. For me, one of the things that crossed the line, and I know a lot of left-wing listeners, if they're listening, will go, oh, not this again, is really the anti-Semitism thing.
I think
I've been a bit more clued up on things.
He definitely spoke out to the people, but I think more specifically, he definitely spoke out to students as well. I think I can say a lot of students here in Leeds, if I was to go around and be like, oh yeah, who are you voting for? The majority of people are going to say Labour because obviously he really appealed to those people. Yeah. And I think that's definitely what caught him. And he's a funny guy. Like, read the tweets, man. Read the tweets. I'll happily drop some in. They are so funny. But that's what caught me is the fact that he came down to my level and it was quite honest of him. So I think that's probably what led me to vote for Labour this time round.
Of course, there's things that Boris Johnson has said that everyone listening will disagree with, and that you'll look at and you'll say they're a smudge on his character and a reason not to vote for him, which I completely agree with. But for me, there's a big difference between saying things that I disapprove of and openly advocating and standing with people who have been guilty of the worst kinds of violence. So for me, it's happened in places like my home in Northern Ireland. So a good example of that would be there was a guy who worked for the British government, but he was in the IRA, called Sean O'Callaghan. He describes John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn in the Labour leadership as useful idiots that were champions of the IRA cause. So we have lots of you can't find a family in Northern Ireland that wasn't affected by the Troubles.
Out of my lifetime, whether it's been a Tory or a Labour Prime Minister, I've never looked at a Prime Minister as being like a genuine person. Whenever I've seen them, it's always, to me, seemed like they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes. Like Boris Johnson's told loads of lies, we're going to get out by Brexit by 31st of October. Now, obviously, I know he had his reasons, but at the end of the day, like I said, he wasn't stupid in it. He knew he would have problems with it, but he made that promise to get the votes.
Do you even call him?
No, not really. I'm not going to lie. Half of his promises, I don't think they're practical. And obviously, you can say you're going to raise the taxes on corporations and on those that are better off. But at the same time, you need to consider the fact that you are going to murk off incentives if you do that. You know what I mean? You're going to lose a bunch of business in it. They're just going to go to other places.
Boris, as a personal feel, I didn't vote for him in the Conservative leadership election. I've never been a total Boris fanboy. I'm a Conservative member. I'm there for the Conservative Party. I'm not there just because Boris Johnson's leader. I think he's said some stupid things in the past, but we need to put that aside now. And I think he's there. He's got good intentions, and yeah.
Did you see that Tony just took the Boris Johnson? He's done some stupid things in the past. Maybe we should just put it aside.
So it's the one Jewish state in the world. You look at the UN. So you've got countries in the world. We currently have Chinese people, Chinese Muslims in concentration camps in the Far East. And we don't hear anything from Corbyn and McDonnell about these communist concentration camps. We hear nothing. You look at the UN. I think it was in 2018 there were 28 reported UN abuses. 21 were against Israel, the only Jewish state in the world. There's no doubt that for me that this isn't an anti-Zionism thing, it's an anti-Semitic thing.
The way they're making it sound, bro, is that if Jeremy Corbyn gets into power tomorrow, everything's just going to go fucking upside down. Like, we used to be under a Labour government.
The former chief of MI5 said that Corbyn can't be trusted with national security.
And do you know what Boris Johnson said?
What?
He said that black people are Piccaninny smiles. There's always been homophobia. It's been anti.
Has he? He's been on Iranian state television, which.
So why does being on an Iranian state television make someone homophobic?
He's got history of supporting the Iranian state.
He doesn't support the Iranian state. What?
He's been on Iranian state television on numerous occasions.
Can I suggest something?
He supports he's pro-Palestine, which hangs gay people. How could you say he's?
No, they don't. Can I suggest something? Yeah. Now, what you're saying is by meeting with all these people now means that I agree with them. Is it not also possible that you're meeting with the other side to gain some common ground, to get an understanding, so that perhaps in the future
they're enemies of the state?
I'm not asking you that. I just asked you a separate question. Is it possible?
You shouldn't be meeting with them.
Can you just answer the question, bro?
You can't.
Is that possible? Could that be could it?
No.
Is it feasibly possible that the reason he went over there was not to have some homophobic terrorist orgy, but just to find some.
I don't know what his reasons were going over there. I'm saying. I don't know what his reasons.
Listen, let's make it easy. Let's follow the questions. Is it possible that the reason he went there was not for any?
I don't know his reasons.
I'm asking, is it possible? Is it physically, feasibly possible? That's what I don't know either.
Probably, but I don't know his reasons.
Neither do I. But
I love the NHS. Woo! Yay!
Yes!
Yeah, love. Shout out NHS.
I think I'll sponsor it. Yeah. I get to sponsor this episode, So that's probably because
I don't think they've got enough money.
That skin to skin contact though, that's 40 quid, you know. 40.
What's going on?
I'm serious. Skin to skin contact.
In America, they charge you for skin to skin contact when you birth your child.
That's what's going to happen
your womb
right
for 9 months.
here.
Yeah. And you say, "Can I hold my child?" They say £5, please.
Check that bill though. Still, can I Klarna it?
It needs to be kept. I think it needs to be attended to, no matter what, doesn't it?
The NHS is definitely in danger, but it's like certain elements will probably continue to be privatised, but the whole thing is not going to be privatised like that. It might happen eventually or very, very slowly, but the whole privatised thing was used as almost like a scare tactic, because it's not just going to become private overnight. You're not just going to end up having to pay 6 bills for an inhaler.
See that this money has to come from somewhere, and it is paid for by taxpayers. And if, I believe it was £28 of extra spending by Labour for every £1 by the Tories in this election, where are we finding 28 times the fund that the current government are spending? Where are we finding that? Where are we finding the extra funding? And what that will do is it will bring the government to its knees. We'll be in front of the International Monetary Fund, and who suffers? The NHS. Who suffers? Our state schools. Who suffers? The poorest in society. So I feel like there's a lot of Tory voters out there who you say, oh, you want the NHS to die, all these sorts of things. It's not true. They want it to be sustainably funded and to not come crashing down when the country's brought to its knees in 5 years.
If you voted Tory, that's calm. I'm not going to completely judge who you are off of it. It says a lot about you. I'm not going to lie and say it doesn't say a lot about you. But I'm not going to completely write you off as a person. You might have other qualities that are great.
I think that, like, it tends to be people who are really, really virulently
politically
anti-Tory.
They believe in this kind of identity politics where white people vote for this, black people should always vote for this, and you're a traitor if otherwise, where left-wing working class people vote for this, right-wing people vote for this, and it shouldn't be how anyone thinks. We aren't born as a group, we're born on our own, and we all have our individual importance. Everyone, for me, should have the freedom to succeed and have the same level of opportunity as everyone else in the world, and their vote should count for just as much. And I think everyone's starting to get to a point where they're so sick of being told what they should think and what they should vote, and all of these things, that it's really got to a point where there's a real protest vote in these kind of northern towns that have been Labour since the 1930s.
You know what it is? Like, there's neither party is perfect. And I read something. I'm going to read it out. There's a fucking post in it. Yeah, 1 second. It's going to take me 2 seconds to get. We're looking at me like I'm wasting your time.
As soon as you reach the post, I'm shutting this down.
Time to remember the best voting advice I have heard. Voting isn't marriage. It's public transport. You are not waiting for the one who is absolutely perfect. You are getting the bus. And if there isn't one going exactly to your destination, don't stay early. So take the one going closer to where you want to be.